Abd al-Rahman III was the emir and caliph of Cordoba in the 10th century Spain. He summed up a life of worldly success at about the age of 70. Listen to what he says. I've now reigned for above 50 years in victory or peace, beloved by my subjects, dreaded by my enemies, and respected by my allies. Riches and honors, power and pleasure have waited on my call. In other words, I have it all. And the payoff? He continues, I have diligently numbered the days of pure and genuine happiness, which have fallen to my lot. He wrote, they amount to 14. 14 days, he says. All the riches the world has to offer, all the power one could possess, reigning for 50 years, and total days of happiness, he says, 14. You know, he identifies something in his reflection that many of us can connect with, many of us can relate with, and perhaps something that all of us are frustrated by. Here's the issue. All of the promises that wealth and prosperity in this world make, they cannot keep. They can't keep. They can't keep. Our passage this morning helps us to reflect on a really terrifying question that this individual observed for and experienced for himself. What if everything you wanted still wasn't enough? What if at the end of your life, you look back over 70, 80, 90 years, and you conclude everything you wanted just wasn't enough? What if getting everything you dreamed of, hoped for in this life leaves you feeling empty? What if you've been chasing something that cannot actually satisfy you? Or what if, to put it another way, you try and try and try and still can't find no satisfaction? Well, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, 8 through 6:12 doesn't avoid that question. It helps us, and boy, do we need the help, helps us to think about how do we live in light of that reality. Prosperity and wealth failing to deliver on what they promise. This section teaches us that those who pursue wealth are never satisfied. It's far better to learn to be content with what you have and to enjoy life. You'll notice throughout our book, we've mentioned it several times, that the preacher, Solomon, is constantly saying there's sort of two ways you can live. You can be chasing after gain, trying to hold on to everything that you can accumulate and acquire from this life, or you can simply be content with what you have and enjoy life. This morning, as we walk through this passage, I'm going to, instead of reading it in its entirety, I'm going to read it as we go. We're going to explore sort of two things. We're going to first consider the problem of prosperity, and then we'll also consider the power to enjoy. The problem of prosperity and the problem to enjoy. If you look at your Bibles, you'll see we're starting at chapter 5, verse 8, and we're going through chapter 6. If you look at the structure of the text, what you'll see that the author does here is assembles and makes this argument is essentially verses 8 in chapter 5 through 17. He's exposing the problem of prosperity. Then he pauses that for 18, 19, and 20 and returns to it again in all of chapter 6. And the solution is buried in the middle. It's like we saw this when we studied the book of Mark, a Markan sandwich, sort of two pieces of bread that are related to each other. And in the middle where the meat is, that's the point. That's the part to focus on. The two pieces of bread sort of are connected to each other, support, and are saying very similar things. But what really matters, what we need to hear is what's in the middle. So to kind of go through this section, I'm gonna pair those two pieces of bread together. So we'll be kind of jumping between chapter 5 and chapter 6. And what we're going to identify is what is the problem with prosperity? What's the problem with pursuing wealth? More specifically, what are the 7 problems? Okay? 7 problems. Let's take them one at a time. The first thing we see is, we'll just summarize this as problem number 1, no fair. No fair. You can have it all and quickly see that for many, life is simply no fair. We've seen this issue of oppression surface multiple times so far in our study of Ecclesiastes. Look down at verses 8 and 9. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for a land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. Again, the topic we're hearing about in these 2 verses is that of oppression and injustice, making it very clear that this is a reality of life under the sun. It's always been with us in varying sort of degrees, and it will always be with us in life under the sun. Throughout society, it doesn't matter what kind of economy or government you have, wherever profit is pursued, this is what Philip Ryken says, wherever profit is pursued without regard for the well-being of other people, oppression and injustice will be a result. Don't be surprised by it. Doesn't also want us to excuse it, but just be honest about its existence. This echoes sort of Jesus' words in Matthew 26, verse 11. You will always have the poor with you. Why? Because the problem isn't, we looked at this last week, in the power necessarily itself. The problem is in the human heart. Maybe some of you are familiar with the phrase, absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's a really wonderful book by Brian Klaus that sort of pushes back against that in some way, shape, or form and helps us understand that actually the issue isn't in the power. That's not necessarily the thing that corrupts. The issue is in the human heart. We are corruptible. That's the issue. He makes his point in verses 8 and 9. Points to a hierarchy where one person oversees another. Poor, suffering under bureaucratic layers of governance. One level of hierarchy sort of policing the other while justice is lost somewhere in the middle among the sort of the red tape. It's a system in which leaders are more interested in watching each other instead of the people that they're supposed to be serving, looking out for their own interests rather than the interests of the people. Verse 9, the second part of there, paints a picture of a king who's primarily concerned with his own interests, not primarily concerned with his own interests, but in protecting people's rights to benefit from their labor. This will in turn benefit all the people in the land. In the end, the preacher is highlighting a common problem with prosperity and wealth. When it becomes the end goal, justice is often sacrificed, and people often get hurt. Some can be more interested in protecting profits than people, and when that happens, well, it's just no fair. Problem number 1. Second problem, no satisfaction. You can have it all and still not be satisfied. Look at verse 10. See this in verse 10 and then in verses 7, 8, and 9 of chapter 6. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. Look at chapter 6, verse 7, 8, and 9. All of the toil of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not satisfied. You see the connection. For what advantage has the wise man over the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to conduct himself before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Many of you are familiar with the story when John D. Rockefeller, largely considered the wealthiest person in the history of the United States, was asked how much money is enough. He famously responded with, just a little more. Many of us maybe can relate to that in our own lives, maybe in the lives of those around you. It appears as if no matter how much you accumulate for yourself, there's always room for more. If you give yourself to building your bank account, your investment portfolio, the numbers can never be too high. There can always be more for you to get, more for you to make, and this will often just leave you wanting more in the end. Now, having a lot of money isn't the issue. That's not necessarily the problem. The fact is, and many of us know, you can do a lot of good with a lot of wealth. You can do a lot of kingdom good with a lot of money. That's not the issue. We learn in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. It's the love, the obsession with the wealth that creates the issue. What makes it so dangerous is not only can it cause someone to do harm to others, but it also can do harm to you. Craving more and more and more. Chapter 6, verse 7, there's an appetite for more. Giving oneself to work, no matter how much money you make, you're just never satisfied. There's always room for more. Tells us it's better for the sight of eyes than a wandering appetite. It's better to enjoy what's right in front of you than to have eyes that drift and dream about what might be. You know, this summer, my family, it's the first time in a number of years that we took a vacation, all 7 of us. And we piled into our Highlander and drove to New York City. And it was a squished ordeal, but it was a rather enjoyable one. It was so much fun. We did it on a budget. We ate cheap food. We went to all the free places, historical places. It was an absolute blast. It was so much fun. Now, like I said, it's been the first time probably in, 5 to 6 years where all 7 of us have done that together. So it was really special, just to savor the times together. Could you imagine, maybe put yourself in my shoes or your own in a different, similar situation. Could you imagine me on that vacation trip? It's probably not hard to imagine. Maybe some of us do it regularly. Pulling out my phone, looking at my Facebook feed or timeline, and seeing another friend on vacation, maybe with his family. Maybe the place that they're going to is more glamorous. Maybe it's further away. Maybe it's more historical or beautiful or relaxing. And I'm sitting there on my vacation scrolling through pictures of my friend's experience, all the while thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that looks really nice. That looks like vacation. My appetite growing more and more and more for something that is not my experience. The preacher here warns us about an appetite that can prevent you from maintaining contact with the present, which, if you want to find enjoyment in this life, is essential. It's essential. The point he's making is that wealth never delivers on its promise. And he's speaking from someone who had it all. No matter how much you have, it can't deliver on its promise. Problem number 3. No fare, no satisfaction, no friends. Look at verse 11. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? More money brings more people who want to take the money from you. That's essentially what he's saying. Goods increase, and those who want to take it from you do as well, whether it's friends or maybe family or freeloaders. Story after story, we see in the headlines of famous people in our culture who made it big and lost it all, in part because of the excessive entourage they kept, hiring friends, giving to the endless needs of people around them. And the more they gave, the more people surrounded them and wanted to take from them. And as a result, it can leave you in a position where you might be wondering, why does this person want to be my friend? Does this person really care about me? Or are they just concerned with what they can get from me? That can be a real problem. Problem number 4, no rest. Chapter 5, verse 12, sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. This is counterintuitive. Most of us don't think this way. Most of us think if I can just make enough money, then I can finally sit back and relax and it'll just all be okay. Well, Solomon paints for us here in chapter 5 a picture of somebody who's unable to do just that precisely because of the wealth they have acquired. It's an interesting phenomenon. You might expect a rich person to be happy and those who are hired to be less happy. The reverse is actually the case. The latter work so hard, they sleep wonderfully. Meanwhile, the heaping treasury of the wealthy prevents actual rest. Some people might say, more money, more problems. And those problems tend to keep you awake at night. You've got an empire to manage. You've got employees to care for, some good issues, concerns. And this can create, if you're not careful, burden, anxiety, and it can prevent rest. 5th, we'll call this one no keeps. Over the years, playing a lot of pickup basketball, whenever you would start a game, you'd have to clarify the rules, right? What are we playing to? Are we calling our own fouls? How does this work? One of the rules was, are we playing keeps or no keeps? Keeps simply means after you score the ball, you keep it, and you keep going until they stop you. No keeps, you score, and then you give the ball back to the next team, and it's their chance, like normal basketball works, right? Well, where wealth and prosperity is concerned, the game is always no keeps. You can't keep it. It doesn't last. You can't take it with you. He makes this point. Look at verse 13. There is a grievous evil I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt. Verse 14. And those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he's father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. It's an example of someone who took all of their money, made a few moves that seemed like promising investments, in actuality turned out to be foolish moves, bad investments. And this hurt that losing this kind of wealth is just amplified if you have people who are depending on you. If you have a son but have nothing to give to him, makes this pain all the more painful. The more you have, the reality is, the more you have to lose. And the result of this loss is hurt. Here today, gone tomorrow. It can take a lifetime to accumulate wealth, and just like that, poof, it can all be gone in a second. Well, look at verse 15. It keeps going. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, and sickness, and anger. This sounds very similar to the language of Job, the story of a man who lost it all and declared in Job 1:21, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it. Where wealth and prosperity are concerned, the game is always no keeps. No matter how much you made, no matter how well you made it, honest, no matter how much you want it, you can't keep it. 6, no joy. Look at verse 1 of chapter 6. There's an evil that I've seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. What's the grievous evil? Summed up, an individual who has everything but enjoys nothing. That's vanity. That's a grievous evil. It's very possible because the possession of unlimited wealth does not guarantee its enjoyment. God can give one without the other. Verse 3, if a man fathers 100 children and lives many years so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity, goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything. Yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good. Do not all go to one place? These are hard verses to read. Compares, in these verses, someone who's held captive by their desire for wealth and prosperity to a stillborn child. What's he doing? Well, let's be clear about what he's not doing. He is not minimizing the deep pain of losing a child. Not at all. He's not minimizing or reducing how tragic such a reality is. It's not his intent here. Rather, he's trying to communicate how someone enslaved to wealth actually doesn't really know what it means to live. Someone can be so enslaved and given over to their desire for wealth and prosperity, they lack the ability to actually live. Doesn't matter how many days you live under the sun. Death is a reality for us all, and all the wealth in the world is going to be, you can have it all, and it will all be taken from you. Therefore, he says, a stillborn child's better off than a person who lives long with a wealth they can't enjoy. Finally, problem number 7, no control. No control. Look at verses 10 through 12, chapter 6. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. The more words, the more vanity, and what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? For who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? The preacher here is making a point he has made repeatedly in our study of Ecclesiastes and will continue to do so. Simply put, God is the one who has created this world. As the sovereign God, he has created it according to certain patterns and an order. And human beings, the reality is, as much as we would like to think it's different, human beings have been doing the same kind of things since day one. He's repeated it over and over and over again. There is nothing new under the sun. In the text, he mentions one who's stronger. It's a reference to God. He's drawing a contrast between God's sovereign power and our lack of control. It does nothing for us to ignore the patterns of life, act like they don't apply, think we can take control and sort of redefine our limits through our own ingenuity in industry. We attempt the impossible, fooling only ourselves. Our success, he says, is like the multiplication of many words. No control or ability to redesign reality as much as we might try. So, summing up point number 1. What's the problem with prosperity and wealth? Simply put, no fare, no satisfaction, no friends, no rest, no keeps, no joy, no control. Sounds a lot like not any fun. No fun, right? Big problem. Well, is there a sort of release valve in this sermon, you might be wondering, or something that you can enjoy? Well, let's consider together verses 18 through 20, the power to enjoy. After laying out all the ways, wealth, and prosperity, before I do this, it is so key that you get point number 1. Because the rest of this world is designed in such a way to convince you that point number 1 is false. That there's not problem with wealth and prosperity, there's promise. And that's all that matters. You are what you make, or you are what you do. I mean, the world shoves these lies down our throat day after day after day. And if we want to have any success in living the life that God has called us to, we have to stare the devil in his face and speak truth right back to him, the father of lies. Wealth and prosperity will not give you what they promise. Believe it, it's true. Power to enjoy. After laying all the ways that wealth and prosperity can fail us, leaving us unsatisfied, anxious, isolated, and ultimately empty, the preacher offers a hopeful alternative. He says in the chapter, like he's been saying, there's a better way. Don't live like that. There's a better way to live. Rather than chasing more, we're invited to receive what we have as a gift and enjoy it. You see this in verses 18 through 20. We move from warning and wisdom to wisdom, from critique to counsel. As you read through the book of Ecclesiastes, you'll see that the preacher is constantly fluctuating between making long observations about how life is. And then he goes from observation to confession. In light of what we see, this is how we live. This is how we are to go about. in verses 18 to 20 is that confessional section. It's instructive and informative of how we live in the face of wealth and prosperity, where we're tempted to chase it. Couple things to note. Verse 18, receive in order to enjoy. How do we enjoy? How do we get the power to enjoy? We receive first in order to enjoy. Verse 18, behold, what I've seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Here in verse 18, the preacher says, what he has seen to be good, what is fitting, it's to eat, to drink, to find joy in the work we're doing, the few days that God gives it to us. He's not selling us back the pleasures he just warned us about. It's not what he's doing. Rather, he's calling us to a radical lifestyle of gratitude and contentment. Joy is not found in having it all, but in receiving what God gives. Keep in mind, God is not some cosmic killjoy who's policing the universe, making sure none of us smile. You can't have any happiness. Don't be joyful. That's not what God is doing. He's not, in fact, he's deeply interested and invested and committed to our joy. He's the source of joy. The key to enjoyment is this life, in this life, is not at striving and grasping after the things of the world, but rather in receiving and in resting in what God has provided. Point number 2, see it in verse 19. We have to recognize that the ability to enjoy comes from God. Look at verse 19. Everyone, also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. The preacher makes it very clear, both the material blessings that we have and the ability to enjoy those blessings, both of those things comes from God. One without the other leads to total frustration. Wealth itself isn't the problem. And poverty isn't inherently virtuous. The real gift is when God enables us to enjoy what we have, however much or little that may be. That's the gift. The ability to enjoy life is grace from God. Thirdly, verse 20, this gift empowers our present. For he will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. It's the idea of godly forgetfulness. The beautiful result. What a picture, a heart that's so occupied with joy instead of fear and comparison and striving, that we stop chasing the wind and we start enjoying the present moment. This is the gift we all need. This is a gift that comes from God. Here's the question. How do we actually live this way? Maybe some of you are here this morning and you have just been frustrated because you feel deep inside you an appetite that just never seems to be satisfied. How do we live this way? I hope this idea of satisfaction is something you want. How do we really become a people who stop chasing and start enjoying? People who are content in a world that constantly tells us we need more. How do we do that? Well, let me give you one insight that I think will be helpful. It has helped me. I trust it will help you. The Scottish minister and theologian from the 19th century by the name of Thomas Chalmers. Many of you may be familiar with him. He's so helpful where this is concerned. In his famous, I think you can find it online if you just Google it. It's called The Expulsive Power of a New Affection. I don't know if it was originally a sermon, I'm not sure. But in this, he reflects on the question that I'm asking right now of how to break the human heart's love affair with the world. How do you do it? Listen to what he says. The love of the world cannot be removed by a mere demonstration of the world's worthlessness. In other words, it does no good trying to simply empty yourself of any desire, convincing yourself that you don't want this or you don't want that. That doesn't get you where you want to be. He goes on and he says, the only way to dispossess of it, or to dispossess it of an old affection, is by the expulsive power of a new one. In other words, you can't just tell your heart to stop wanting things. The heart's like a vacuum, and it will be filled. Constantly grasping towards something. If you try to empty it without filling it with something greater, it won't stay empty. It'll just latch onto something else. See, brothers and sisters, you don't cure worldliness by scolding yourself. You cure it by finding something more worthy of your love. You don't defeat greed with guilt. No, you defeat it with desire, a new, deeper desire for something better, something greater. More specifically, someone better, someone greater. One pastor once said, the only way to be content in this world is to be unsatisfied by this world. That's the only way to do it. And who's better than anything that this world has to offer? Very simply, his name is Jesus. He is the new affection our hearts need. If you want to be content in this world, you increase your desire for Jesus. He's the only one who can fill the aching void that wealth, pleasure, and possessions cannot. He's the only one who, though rich, became poor for our sake, so that by his poverty, you can become rich. He gives what prosperity and wealth never can. They always promise, but they can never deliver on it. Jesus alone gives it. He absorbed unfairness in this world, the righteous for the unrighteous. And he who believes in him will never thirst. This Jesus offers you friendship, true friendship, not human friendship, friendship with God. He gives us rest. He invites us into his rest and promises a rest that will last forever. He brings us into his hand and promises that no one, once you're there, can snatch you from it. He gives us a joy that none can take away, an eternal inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. If we would just give up our control and put our trust in him. That's what Jesus offers. To do what all of the wealth and the prosperity you could achieve in this world will never deliver on. If you're weary from chasing satisfaction, the invitation of Ecclesiastes and of Jesus is clear. Stop striving. Start receiving. Let your heart be occupied not with anxiety or appetite, but with joy, an eternal joy.